Hello viewers, Bhavini has organized Swachhata Pakhwada from 16th to 26th February 2021. As part of the program, we welcome Dr. Dawn, Professor, Research and Head, Center for Waste Management, Center of Excellence for Energy Research, Satyabama University of Science and Technology, to present a lecture program on waste management and entrepreneurial perspective. Thank you.
Good morning, one and all gathered here. This is Dawn, Professor Research, Head, Center for Waste Management, Center of Excellence for Energy Research, Satyabama Institute of Science and Technology. I'm here to deliver a talk on waste management and entrepreneurial perspective. Outline of my presentation would be Introduction to Waste, Circular Economy and Zero Waste, Recycling and Waste Management Do's and Don'ts, Indian Scenario of Waste Management, Waste Pickers' Role, Waste and Connects, CMW Initiatives Towards Entrepreneurship for Livelihood. Waste is a natural resource in the wrong place. Change the context and you have usable products, Daniel Freytag said. So to understand this better, let us go into what circular economy is. Circular economy will be well understood if we first try to understand what linear economy is all about. Linear economy, something begins and ends in a linear chain, is what is all about linear economy. You start with the raw material, you have products converted. In the due course of getting products, you may get many waste materials that are thrown away, that are discarded, that are not found of any use. If an economy is going to be following this principle, then that particular economy is classified as linear economy. On the other hand, circular economy is the best preferred economy, wherein materials that are used as sources for converting any product, in the due course of making them, they generate a lot of waste, which in turn will be converted into useful products. So recovery of materials for reuse, recycling, and then for the whatever product you get, that in turn will have a value. Such economy is referred to as circular economy. So you have first in the circular economy cycle, refuse. So once you acquire the raw materials, the raw material is taken, or it is considered how that raw material can be converted into a product. So that is what is meant by reform. Reformation involves a lot of thinking, so you need to design a process, design the conditions to transform the raw material into products. So all of this are first analyzed and brought into line. And in the due course of us converting the raw material into product, you may have several unit operations or processes that are involved, and you develop conditions such that you try to reduce, that is where optimization plays a role. You have to optimally choose the conditions such that the requirement of raw materials, the requirement of energy, everything is reduced, and you end up in transforming the raw material into product. So that is where we try to reduce. Optimization and reduction come in line with each other. So once the product is formed, the product needs to be transported and it needs to be distributed. So once distributed and consumer receives the product, we start using it. It becomes obsolete after a period of time, and once it becomes obsolete after a period of time, we try to discard it. So it is at this stage our waste management principles begin to act. We need to find options so that these materials can be reused. So once the possibility of reuse is thought about, then we can think about segregating the waste that is collected. The segregation of waste helps in diverting the waste properly into other recycling processes that can convert the waste into useful materials. So once the product is used and segregated, Finally, whatever possible is directed for recycling, and the one that cannot be recycled at all is sent for final destination, which would be landfills most often. So this portion should be minimized. The more you minimize this, the more you make the economy circular or closed loop. The more you make it closed loop, the process entirely becomes a zero waste process. So circular economy and zero waste processes are connected. So for instance, if you try to do something at your household, for instance, you make coffee, or in the process of making coffee, we try to use milk, right? So all of us would have observed that the milk covers are not discarded, they are stored at houses, and then it is sold to the recycler, and they give you some minimal money. So this is the kind of principle that are going to be adopted. Whatever small thing possible, you try to accumulate them, accumulate the waste material, and try to give it to the licensed recyclers, and then that would in turn generate revenue for the waste that you have collected at your households. So likewise, plastics, then papers, your newspapers, all of these, knowingly or unknowingly, all of us practice waste management at our household. What we do, we preserve, we store it, then we try to give it away to the recycler who comes to our doorstep, and then we get money out of it. Though it is small, it has a lot of value, because we are trying to dispose the waste in a very proper and effective manner rather than dumping it into the landfill. So when you do that, when you dump into the landfill, there are going to be other severe hazards associated with it. There's going to be contamination of the land. There's going to be the materials that may dissolve in the soil because of the natural water content in it. It may seep into the groundwater. It may cause groundwater contamination. And as the landfill gets occupied and there's no space for further accumulation of waste, excuse me, no accumulation of waste, people will try to burn out the waste, and in turn that may cause a lot of air pollution. So recycling, everything is possible. So what is that we need to understand? We already saw about all these things. You have the reduce, reuse, recycle, recovery, and landfill. So this order is very important. We need to prefer most favored opinion would be this, and the least favored would be landfilling. So this is the order we have to follow. Whatever we use, whatever we try to use, recover, and all those materials that cannot be reused at all, we try to dispose onto the landfill. So the quantum of material that we decide to dispose on the landfill should be least. This is because we may not have enough space to accumulate, and rather it is going to be contributing to several other environmental effects, as I told you earlier. But whenever we are going to fill onto the land, we need to make sure that the disposal mechanism is safe, and hence proper measures of transforming the waste onto the landfill needs to be taken. So this is the least preferred one. However, the most preferred opinion or option would be to reduce the waste. So that simply, when we are given food, when we are served with some food, we should learn to say no if something excess is provided to us. So when something excess is provided to us, what we do is whatever possible we consume, the remaining we leave over on the plates. So this is a small example that can be narrated to you, wherein if you say a no to the excess food that was supplied to you, you could have avoided this wastage of food. So whatever possible, whenever possible, you try to reduce the consumption so that you don't generate any waste. So let's assume we have adopted that. We have tried to reduce the consumption. However, we still generate waste. So if that is going to be the option, then what we would do is we would try to look in for things that we can reuse. So this also I can narrate with things that we already practice at home. If we have 2 or 3 children in our homes, what we try to do is we try to use the elder son's dress, the shirt or the trouser, to the younger son. because he has overgrown, the younger son will use. So we have seen this happening in our households. So this is not a bad practice. However, hygienically we can transfer these used materials to the next person who is capable of reusing it. So this option is the next one we need to prefer. So we have attempted to reduce. Probably if we buy we have the habit of buying 12 clothes in a month. You try to reduce it, because it's not necessary to buy 12 new clothing for a month. So try to reduce it. So that is one thing. If at all you have the option of reducing, you do it. Or if you have the option of reusing the old clothes, we will do that, so that we will not be generating any waste cloth that is otherwise going to be dumped onto the landfill. Then you try to recycle it. So that is the next favored option, wherein whatever possible material that has been reused comfortably and still it's going to come to the stage where you have to throw it away. If there is a mechanism to recycle it, let us do it. So that is the option that has been given here. You buy a lot of material from shops, and these days they do not give us plastic covers, because we know the reasons it is banned, and we are provided with some cloth bags or some reusable bags, some paper bags that are maybe it can withstand some weight, so we try to reuse it, right? So if that is given, and if those are paper bags, we know it has value, it can be recycled. So you try to store them and you try to sell away to the recycler who comes at your doorstep, or a person who collects the waste material to collect it. You just give it away to them so that you recycle it. Then the next method is recovery. So this can be well narrated with the example of e-waste that is generated in our household. We all of us are now very much comfortable in using the mobile phones. These mobile phones are what to say, they become obsolete, they become outdated very often. So it's a practice that once in 3 years or once in 5 years we try to replace our old mobile phones. So these mobile phones, apart from being a fashion, apart from being a technology provider to us, they also have a lot of heavy metals, noble metals in them, circuits, certain components that are dangerous. So all of that are going to be present in it. So just by discarding it, we are throwing away a lot of hazard potential material into the environment. So it needs to be safely discarded, safely given away to the licensed recycler. So what he does is he tries to dismantle it, destructs the data that is available in the mobile, try to recover whatever useful material possible, try to get value out of it, try to recycle certain things that can be recycled. All those options are given in that recycling facility for the e-waste management thing that is observed. And finally, what is not at all possible, you cannot do anything with it, right? Such materials are discarded onto the landfill. So that has to be the least preferred option. So everything, there is a possibility to recycle everything, right? So how can we do that? So that for that to be achieved, we need to know what are the things that can be recycled very easily. So we can recycle all bottles, cans and papers, keep items clean and dry, no plastic bags should be used. So if we follow these rules, definitely we can recycle plastic bottles and containers, food and beverage cans, paper, flattened cardboard and paper bowls. So these are things that probably we may not be very familiar in our country. However, there are certain communities that practice this very effectively. You need to understand, for recycling there are two storage bins provided. One is a recycling bin which is covered properly, which is not open. On the other hand, you have recycling boxes. So recycling boxes are provided for materials that have a chances of breakage. So more they can break. You cannot store them in these kind of boxes, because on top of it, if people keep trying to throw heavier materials, then there are chances of it to break. Then recovering that from the mixed waste may become possible. So it is better to store glass bottles and jars in separate recycling boxes. On the other hand, paper and cardboard, cartons, cans, aerosols, and foil, plastic pots, tubs, trays, and bottles can all be stored or kept in these recycling bins, which may be further taken away, segregated, and then processed. Accordingly, they may be converted into other value-added materials. Now let us look into the Indian scenario of how much of waste is generated and how things have been taken away for segregating and managing the waste. Average waste is about 450 grams of waste generated per person per day. There is much variability in per capita daily household municipal solid waste generation, which ranges from 170 grams per person in small towns to 620 grams per person in large cities. A 2007 study of Indian metro cities with a population of over 1 million inhabitants estimates municipal solid waste composition by weight with the following combinations. 41% is organic or biodegradable, 40% is inert, 6% is paper, 4% is plastic, 4% is textiles, 2% glass, 2% metals, and 1% leather. According to a 2014 India Planning Commission Municipal Solid Waste study, 51% of municipal solid waste was found to be organic or biodegradable, 32% to be inert or non-organic, and 17% is recyclable waste. So this is another indication where the growth of population has also contributed to increase in the percentage of organic or biodegradable waste. So if we are discarding this much amount of organic or biodegradable waste, this much of waste that can be recovered and reused by either in the form of energy or in the form of valuable material like compost, we are actually wasting our revenue. Income is lost. That is another reason of decrease in the economy of India. So waste management plays a serious role in building up the economy of India because it gives a lot of entrepreneurial opportunity. It is small businesses that can give you big money. Now, beginners of how this entrepreneurship in waste can be brought about, or how we can think about establishing an entrepreneurship, we need a fundamental requirement. Okay, like how a cell is a fundamental unit of any living thing. We need to have these people without whom waste management is not at all possible. So we need to have the waste pickers playing a serious role in collection of household waste, segregation of waste, and finally transporting it to them, to the recyclers who are concerned in recycling the waste to useful materials. So waste pickers play a vital role in waste collection in cities around the world. In fact, in some developing countries, these informal workers are the only source of waste collection. So much of role they play in collection of waste before the waste is actually, segregated and sorted into technologies where it can be well managed. So this is just a statistics for you, just to ease the talk. We understand that personal and socio-economic profile of collectors. This understanding is very, very important. We need to know who are actually involved in waste picking. 90% of waste pickers are women. 50% are under the age of 35 years. 25% are widowed or deserted. 30% are women-headed households. 90% of the women are illiterate. 80% are sole earners. 45% contribute to more than 50% of their household income. Most of them are from the downtrodden community. 50% start their work in this sector. Most waste pickers source domestic waste. Most see no alternative outside this occupation. So this much of livelihood generation waste is giving to so many people, especially to the downtrodden, especially to the deserted woman, especially who have no people to support. We think waste is waste, but it gives so much of earning and livelihood to the required people. Conditions of work. So when so many opportunities or so many things are given by the waste to these kind of people, how properly or orderly this particular sector needs to be taken care of is what the government or the legal bodies are looking for. So these waste pickers really need attention, they need protection, they need a proper organized group or organization to take care of them in terms of how much of regulations need to be framed so that they can protect their livelihood, they can protect their self, and because most of them are women, how much of gender bias they will be going through, how much of gender harassment they will be going through, all of that needs to be taken care of. And for that we need to understand the conditions in which they are working. 75 percentage walk for more than 5 hours. So you will see them carrying this trolley around streets, several streets, traveling several kilometers. So 75 percentage of them walk for more than 5 hours in a day to collect the waste and take it to the site of disposal. 50 percentage work 9 to 12 hours daily. So that is their working time, because apart from collecting them, they are also involved in segregation. So that's how their work gets extended. They are using manually collecting trolleys to collect the garbage. 30% have been bitten by dogs. So these are the other kind of what to say, we can call it unexpected things that can happen as they do their job. Common problems include, as I told you, harassment, insecure earnings, no legal protection, no social security, unfair practices by traders, vulnerability to skin, gastrointestinal, and muscular skeleton ailments. So, with so much of ergonomics, bad conditions to work, we have these poor waste pickers who help us keep our environment clean and all of us healthy and hygienic. So this was just a case study, a report generated by Chikarmane et al. In 2001, and this is what is the scenario in Pune. You are able to see some kind of work happening with the help of the waste pickers. So, with the importance they get, we have this global alliance of waste pickers formed who govern this entire team, who take care of them, who are monitoring how much of benefits they are getting, whether they are getting or not, and if there is any, I'm sorry, if there is any deviation, they try to support them. So the Global Alliance of Waste Pickers is a networking process supported among thousands of waste picker organizations with groups in more than 28 countries covering mainly Latin America, Asia, and Africa. So this is one small thing that represents how your household waste is taken and sent to the recycling units, to the compost, and finally to the landfill. So you have source segregated at the, waste segregated at the source itself. Here you are able to see two bins. So the practice is from each household, the waste is segregated from the household itself, trying to put them in two different bins, the green bin and the red bin. The green bin is useful in collecting all the waste materials that can be converted to compost or biogas using a biomethanation plant. So this is the route. Okay, so the green waste, the organic waste, is transported. It is taken to the materials recovery center, where further segregation happens, so that you directly divert only the organic or the biodegradable materials either to the biomethanation plant or to the composting unit. So what happens to the other materials that are wasted in the red bin or collected in the red bin? They are diverted once again as recyclables and non-recyclables. These non-recyclables are the ones that we are trying to throw away on the landfill. The recyclables, you find suitable licensed recyclers, try to divert waste accordingly, and finally you try to get varying products from these recycling units which have a lot of value. So for example, you may not have a common recycling facility where you will be recycling everything at a time. So you may have recyclers for plastics, I'm sorry, recyclers for plastics, recyclers for waste material, e-waste, recyclers for biomedical waste. So each of them hold a different facility, each of them hold a different license, they have a different technology, and from the recyclable materials, so many value-added products can be formed. So we saw the role of the waste pickers. There are other things that also help us connect the recycler and the source generators, the waste generators. So waste generators would be either domestics or industry people who generate the waste, and they in turn will be connected to recyclers through proper organizations. We have a lot of portals coming these days. So you have the kupatoti.com in Chennai and kachradabba.com in Pune. They do this purpose. This service. You have a facility called Trash Request. So after you collect a particular quantity of waste material at your household or in your community or in your industry, you try to approach them, you try to sell it away to them, and finally they in turn will give you some revenue out of it, or they in turn can connect you to some recyclers, and directly probably you give away some waste materials and try to buy recycled material. So such kind of links can be established with the portals like kupatoti.com. We have another person called kabadiwala.com. They also do the same kind of the connectivity. They research into the informal sector, and commercial pilots in India, Indonesia, and Ivory Coast provide strong evidence to the commercial, environmental, and social benefits of forming mutual partnerships with stakeholders in the informal waste supply chain. So what is that we need to witness and see is how waste from an informal sector is getting converted into a formal sector, how people involved are given recognition, how people involved are they are channelized properly, and how things are happening. In India, maybe this is a slow process, but definitely will it will be catalyzed, it will be speeded up because of the number of initiatives that the government of India is taking. Swachh Bharat is one scheme, and it is through that scheme we are celebrating this 10 days of Swachhata in the Bhavni. So with all that introduction about waste and how things are handled elsewhere, how people are looking at waste, what kind of economies are involved in waste management, I would now enter into what happens in the Center for Waste Management at Satyabhama Institute of Science and Technology. So the initiatives that we take, how we handle the waste materials, what kind of products we try to make, all of that are going to be detailed in the coming slides. The first one we did is conversion of waste cooking oil into biodiesel. So we are all familiar what biodiesel is. It's a green fuel. Though it cannot be directly used as 100% fuel in the engines that are available presently because of their modification requirements, we can be using them as blends. So recommended blend is 12% of biodiesel from our research study. So we have proved that waste cooking oil biodiesel generated from the waste cooking oil that is available enormously from our university mess, we try to convert that into biodiesel. We have a pilot scale unit in our facility. It is a 50-liter capacity plant that is capable of converting the waste cooking oil into biodiesel. So it is catering to the requirement of 5 of our institution buses which are operated with biodiesel. So when we do this, when we practice this, converting the waste cooking oil into biodiesel, what are the benefits we see? We are trying to divert the waste cooking oil for fuel production, so which means we are getting fuel. Thereby, the consumption of diesel is reduced. So we have began with 5. Slowly, we will be expanding to the other buses also. That would be a gradual thing because we will be having to do a lot of tests over a period of time, and only then emphasis for complete operation of the buses with the 12% biodiesel can be emphasized. The second thing is the prevention of the waste cooking oil reuse in cooking. So earlier when we did not bring this concept into our institution. There were cases where we had a lot of small vendors approaching us to buy these waste cooking oil. So what they would do is they would come and purchase it, and they would use it for frying other food items. So reusing the waste cooking oil is prevented, and thereby you are trying to prevent a lot of health hazards associated with it. So cancerous compounds, you have the Alzheimer's disease because of the consumption of excess waste cooking oil over a period of time. So all of these can be prevented when you stop using waste cooking oil for frying operations again and again. So you have the green fuel made. So you have when we tested it with the engines, standby engines, and with the buses, we found that the emissions are clean when compared to the conventional diesel. You have reduction in carbon monoxide, which is dangerous. You have sulfur oxides reduction happening. Zero sulfur is also observed, zero sulfur content in the emissions. In some biodiesels, it may not happen because of the content of sulfur entering because of the cooking operation. So we are slowly researching in that concept, wherein the waste cooking oil itself will be made zero sulfur oil and then processed into biodiesel. So when we thought about this control in the emissions in terms of the contaminants coming out through the emission, naturally we are going to have a cleaner environment. So this is one aspect. So when waste cooking oil is generated conventionally or in practice, what people will usually do is either you dump it in your waste basket, waste bin that is available in the household, or you try to drop it into the wash basin. So two things we do, all of us would have done. The first thing, when you allow it to dump into the common waste, that is the municipal solid waste, what would happen is when it reaches the landfill, this oil, you may think it is just small quantum generated in your household. Imagine the same thing happening in so many houses in Chennai, and then the next level of regimes and all over India. You will be, allowing so much quantum of oil to seep into the landfill. Naturally, this will enter into the groundwater, and it will cause contamination of the groundwater. On the other hand, if you try to drop it into the sewer line, that is just put it into your wash basin, it will try to travel into the sewer lines, but naturally, because of its viscous nature, it will try to settle in certain bends, and it may not flow very easily, causing, and like this, if there's going to be continuous accumulation, it may lead to sewer block. And hence, when you are diverting the waste cooking oil for biodiesel production, you are improving the health aspects, and also you are trying to prevent groundwater contamination as well as municipal sewer block. So this is the 50-liter plant that I was referring to. So this is the major unit, the transesterification unit, converting the waste cooking oil into biodiesel, and this is a refining unit wherein the biodiesel is cleaned, washed, and finally it is dried up before given away to the buses to fuel the buses. So this reactor, it can be used as a transesterification reactor or a esterification reactor. It serves dual purpose according to the quality of the oil we use. If we are having a very poor quality oil, then the quality is determined by a parameter called free fatty acid percentage. If the free fatty acid percentage is less than 4, then we term it as a good quality oil. So directly this transesterification reactor is brought into use. On the other hand, if the quality is poor, you esterify it to reduce the free fatty acid content, then take it to the transesterification unit and then refine it. And finally, you get the product which is biodiesel. I'm sorry. So this mixed waste cooking oil, if it's less than 4%, as we have in our Satyabama Institute of Science and Technology MES, the operating time needed is 1.5 hours. 60 hours 60 degrees centigrade is the temperature required. Then you have the methanol to oil ratio to be 4.5:1. So all the while I did not speak about this content called methanol. When biodiesel is to be made, you have to have an alcohol for the transesterification process. Now, what is this transesterification process? Oil itself is a mixture of esters. When we add methanol, allow it to operate for 60 degrees centigrade for a period of 1.5 hours in the presence of a catalyst, which can be an acid catalyst or a base catalyst. In our case, we use a base catalyst, that is sodium hydroxide. When you take 0.5 weight percentage of the catalyst along with it, the waste cooking oil is converted into biodiesel, and the yield observed is 98%. So these are the two images that help you understand the extended work that's happening in the Center for Waste Management Lab. Apart from converting biodiesel from waste cooking oil, we also convert fat from sheep skin, which is also a waste. Try to extract the fat, transesterify the fat. So this is the lab scale transesterification reactor, similar to this one in the pilot scale. Once the reactor completes the reaction, you are transferring it into a separating funnel. So the separation also happens in this unit itself. In case of the pilot scale biodiesel production facility, you have the biodiesel collected at the top and the glycerol collected at the bottom because of the density difference. So the biodiesel thus collected is crude, it needs to be refined, and only after the refining operation it can be tested in the engine, as you see here, right? So this process is happening here. So what is the refining operation we do? We do something called as washing. Washing is, we use warm water at the range of 70 degrees centigrade. Equal quantity of biodiesel and warm water are used, agitated. So some mixing operation is done so that the biodiesel content is well kept in contact with the water, so that all the contaminants are tried to tried to be recovered, removed because of the washing. So probably this happens for a period of time, and once that is achieved, you allow the two materials to separate. So you will have the biodiesel wash water because of the density getting collected at the bottom, and the washed biodiesel at the top. So whatever we have done now is the first washing. Now what do I mean by first washing? So refining cannot happen in a single stage. It is never possible, even if it is if the quality of the oil is that very good. So what will we do? How will we decide whether we need to have the second set or second cycle of washing? That can be done by testing the quality of the wash water that is collected. So you will have a turbid, cloudy, milky-like solution that is collected, and its pH would be in the alkaline range. So when I decide that the the washing cycle has to be stopped, I should be getting this wash water with a pH to be equal to 7. So until I achieve that, I have to repeat this washing. What do we mean by repeating the washing? Take the biodiesel, which it will still remain in this tank because we will just discard the water alone. Once again, we will try to fill this tank equally with whatever quantum of biodiesel was taken. The same quantum of warm water will be taken, agitation will be given, and the washing will happen. Once again allowed to separate so that the wash water collected, its pH will be tested, and the pH should be neutral. So until the pH achieves neutrality for the wash water collected, we need to repeat this washing cycle. So this refining operation is consumptive in time. It will take several hours, maybe because of the quality of the oil that we use. And once it is done, then you have to do the drying of the oil, because lot of moisture would have got contained in the oil that needs to be removed. Because when moisture enters into the diesel engine, you know what issues will be there. There will be knocking of the engine, there will be corrosion of the internal parts. So to avoid all of those, we need to ensure that the moisture content is completely removed. The acid number of the biodiesel is kept less than 0.05% so that you can avoid corrosion. So all these aspects this refining operation does. So what is this image? This is another small research that we took up, wherein we wanted to improve the quality of the biodiesel. So there is another a complaint with respect to using biodiesel in cold conditions, is that these will actually solidify under colder climate. So we need to improve the cold flow properties of biodiesel. In order to improve the cold flow properties of biodiesel, what we do is we try to add certain additives. So magnesium oxide nanoparticles was one such additive we tried to blend in very small quantum so that the cold flow properties are improved. The freezing of the biodiesel was not observed in colder conditions. So this is a major problem when when biodiesel is used in colder conditions or in colder countries. Another product that we made out of the waste, and that too related with the biodiesel plant, is I was speaking about the separation of biodiesel, and you have this glycerine or glycerol that is collected at the bottom. So what you see here is the glycerol collected. A lab scale demonstration is given to you. This glycerol is a byproduct. It is referred as a byproduct because it has lot of industrial applications. One application is making use of glycerol as a heat transfer fluid. So when I use glycerol of this cadre, the viscosity is more, the blocking of the material in which it is allowed to flow. For example, if I use it as a heat transfer fluid in the tube side in a heat and shell and tube heat exchanger, then the blockage of the tubes can happen. So it is better to reduce the viscosity, improve the quality of the glycerol. So we attempted to do two processes. One, we just did the acid treatment using phosphoric acid, and we tried to improve the quality of the oil. So glycerine after acid treatment, from this stage it turned into this color. So we reduced the color, we reduced the viscosity with the acid treatment, and this condition was optimized for the bioglycerol that was collected from waste cooking oil converting into biodiesel. So this glycerine was further purified by adsorption with activated carbon. So activated carbon usage is enormous with respect to the biodiesel plant operated, because we have waste water generated that can be treated with activated carbon, and we have the bioglycerol obtained that can also be treated with activated carbon, purified, and the grade is improved, thereby the value of money that can be obtained by this quality of glycerol compared to this is more. So to improve the quality, we have adopted adsorption using food waste. So these are the three categories of glycerol that you see. One, immediately collected after biodiesel production. This is the first stage refining, and this is the second stage refining. Apart from that, the glycerol is also used in making what is called as deep eutectic solvent. So with the addition of choline chloride, another chemical, and under the optimized condition, the reaction of crude glycerol ended up in the formation of what is called as deep eutectic solvent, a solvent which is very much comparable with methanol. Whenever methanol needs to be replaced, this solvent has to be, this solvent can be used. Now, why should we think about replacing the methanol? Because methanol comparatively is toxic, it is banned, and hence slowly we are trying to replace methanol with this green solvent called deep eutectic solvent. So I spoke about the role of activated carbon in our process. So our objective is to convert the biodiesel production facility in the Center for Waste Management Laboratory into a zero waste unit. So we are trying to convert whatever possible, be it a byproduct or be it a waste material that's coming out of the unit, trying to convert it into useful materials, and that's what we are in line doing with. And for that to happen, once again we are beginning with waste. Once again, this is the waste generated in our institution mess. We have tried to develop a process, tried to convert this food waste into activated carbon. The surface area is so improved that it can help in the treatment of the wash water. So this is the wastewater or wash water that is obtained from every batch of biodiesel refining that we do. So this is one such batch. When we treat it with activated carbon, we will get very clear water, and that water in turn can be reused in the same process for washing the biodiesel. So you see another thing, this is the liquid soap made once again from the bioglycerol. We have tested and the reports seem to be good. We have not still commercialized it. We are in the process of it. The glycerol that is recovered from the biodiesel unit is converted into the liquid soaps. And here you see the washing soap. We are not recommending the use of waste cooking oil for bathing soaps. We converted into detergent soaps. This conversion also happens with the help of an alkali. That's going to be the catalyst. Saponification reaction is allowed to happen. So this is not a new thing to us. All of us have learned the soap making process. But one new thing is, unlike the commercial soaps that are available, these soaps do not lather much, but they clean very effectively. So we have achieved the conversion of waste cooking oil to detergent soap for cleansing applications. No lathering agent addition, removes dirt with less water requirement. That is another important thing that we do. More the lathering effect, more will be the water consumed. It's a simple process suitable for being made with low investment through micro enterprises. So this is our objective. We are looking for small businesses that would support the society, that would support the needed people, so that they can make their livelihood of these waste materials, thereby generating a potential income, sustainable income for them. This is another example and another initiative of the Center for Waste Management, wherein we have converted the ritual waste. So you see the ritual waste, all of us are familiar with what ritual wastes are. We go to temples, churches, mosques, wherever we go, we see these kind of waste material, the flowers that are offered. These flowers, when they actually dry, these are in turn used, converted into incense sticks. So you have these incense sticks that are made from the ritual waste, and you have the self-help group women involved for this. We identified one of the villages near Satyabama Institute of Science and Technology under the Unnat Bharat Abhiyan scheme. We have the village identified as Kumiri. It is in this village we implemented this I cannot call it a very new technology. A process developed by us, wherein the waste material is converted into incense sticks. So we were the first ones to do it here. We started this in 2014, but we just did not popularize it at that time. We had an opportunity through the Unnat Bharat Abhiyan to convert this small product that we developed in our lab, so that it can benefit the society. So when I say benefiting, it not only gives money to the required people, but also it protects the environment, as these ritual sticks are less smoking, non-toxic, fragrance emitting, eco-friendly incense sticks for livelihood improvement and entrepreneurship development. So these are some images that you see, the self-help group women involved in rolling. And we had an expert team visiting this micro enterprise. They represented the AICT committee for evaluating us, as we were selected as one among the top 10 for the receipt of the Vishwakarma Awards. We ran into the final presentation, and we came one among the top 5. However, we did not bag the prize. Probably we need to improve on certain aspects. However, we are happy that we were able to participate in this Vishwakarma Award function, and you have this expert team visiting us. Thank you for the opportunity. It is my time to just say, let us reuse, reduce, recycle. And if you have any queries or any guidance needed in terms of waste management, you can always contact me. I am available at dawn@satyabama.ac.in. Thank you.